Part 1. Life was everything I had ever dreamed of. My wife, Susan, and I had been together for nearly a decade, married for 6 years, and every moment felt like a blessing. We built our lives together, overcoming challenges and celebrating victories, always hand in hand. Our home was our sanctuary. A beautiful 2-story house with a white picket fence, nestled in a quiet neighborhood where we knew all our neighbors by name. Every morning, the smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen as Susan prepared breakfast while I played with our 3-year-old son, Michael. His laughter echoed through the house, a sound that never failed to brighten even the toughest days. We were partners in everything. Susan worked in marketing, excelling in her field with a natural charisma that made her a favorite at the office. I, on the other hand, thrived as an IT consultant, ensuring that our family was comfortable. Our finances were solid, our careers fulfilling, and most importantly, our love unwavering. Weekends were our time to escape from the routine of work. We took Michael to the park, where he loved feeding the ducks and chasing after his little soccer ball. Sometimes, we packed a picnic and drove to the countryside, where we spent hours just lying in the grass, staring at the sky, lost in conversation about our dreams for the future. Susan was the perfect mother. She adored Michael, reading him bedtime stories every night, tucking him in with a gentle kiss on his forehead. She had this way of making even the most ordinary days feel special, turning simple home-cooked dinners into candlelit meals and rainy days into adventures with forts made of blankets and whispered stories of knights and dragons. Our friends often joked that we were the couple everyone aspired to be. They saw our connection, the way Susan and I would share knowing glances from across the room, the effortless way we fit together. Date nights were sacred to us. Every Friday, without fail, we dressed up and went out, whether it was to a fancy restaurant or just a quiet cafe where we could talk for hours. We never ran out of things to say, never tired of each other's company. Even on the busiest days, we found ways to show love. A handwritten note left on the bathroom mirror, a surprise lunch delivery to the office, or just a warm embrace after a long day. Our love was in the little things, the stolen kisses, the shared smiles, the way we reached for each other's hands in the dark. Michael was growing up so fast, and we were savoring every moment. We talked about giving him a sibling soon, expanding our family, filling our home with even more love and laughter. We had everything we could ever want, each other, our son, our life together. Susan's parents adored me, often calling me the son they never had. We spent holidays with them, celebrating Thanksgiving around a crowded dinner table and Christmas mornings filled with laughter and warmth. My parents, though a bit more reserved, respected Susan and loved Michael dearly. Family was important to both of us, and we made sure our son knew the joy of being surrounded by people who loved him. Every morning, I woke up beside Susan feeling grateful. She had this way of making life feel effortless, like we had figured out the secret to happiness. We took turns making coffee, teasing each other about who had to get up first. Sometimes, we stayed in bed a little longer, wrapped up in each other's arms, just enjoying the quiet before Michael woke up and filled the house with energy. Vacations were something we prioritized, making memories in places we had always dreamed of visiting. We took Michael to Disney World for the first time last summer, and watching his face light up at the sight of Mickey Mouse was a moment I would never forget. Susan held my hand as we walked through the park, our son on my shoulders, his laughter blending into the cheerful music playing around us. Nights at home were just as special. We would put Michael to bed, then settle on the couch with a glass of wine, watching our favorite shows or just talking about our day. Sometimes, we would plan our future, discussing the dream home we wanted to build one day or the places we wanted to travel to once Michael was older. We were a team, and there was never a moment I doubted the strength of our bond. Love was in everything we did. It was in the way Susan would playfully steal food off my plate at dinner, the way she would laugh at my terrible dad jokes, the way she would rest her head on my chest at night, her fingers tracing lazy circles on my arm. It was in the way we parented together, how we balanced responsibilities, how we always had each other's backs. It was the kind of happiness that people dream about, the kind of love that felt unbreakable. We were the perfect family. Or so I thought. Part 2. It all started with small things. Small enough to ignore. Small enough to dismiss. But the problem with little things is that they pile up, and before you know it, they're no longer little things. Susan had always been predictable. She had routines, patterns, habits. She was the kind of woman who liked order in her life, and I liked that about her. I knew what time she left for work and what time she came home. I knew what perfume she wore, what brand of shampoo she used. I knew when she was happy, when she was stressed, when she was exhausted. And then one day, I didn't know anymore. It started with late nights. Not many, just one or two at first. She was always dedicated to her work, so when she told me she had to stay late to finish a project, I believed her. But then it happened again, and then again. Suddenly, staying up late became the norm, not the exception. One night, I made dinner for Michael and me, expecting Susan to come home soon. 7 o'clock passed, then 8, then 9. When she finally walked through the door at almost 10, she was smiling, but it was a turned-off smile. It was forced, and she smelled different. Not bad, just different. Long day, I asked, keeping my voice light. She nodded and kissed me on the cheek. Yeah, so much to do. She went straight to the shower. That was the first call. Then it was her phone. Susan never hid it. She'd left it on the kitchen table, on the coffee table, screen up and unlocked. But now it was always face down. Always in my pocket. Always where I couldn't see it. One evening, she got up from the couch with her phone in her hand. She was smiling at the screen, but as soon as she noticed me watching, her expression changed. She turned off the screen and put the phone in her back pocket, giving me a quick smile. "It's Emily from work," she said. I nodded. I wanted to believe her. I told myself that it was all make-believe. It was easier than facing the alternative. The gym was next. Susan had always been into fitness, but now she was obsessed. Every night, without exception, she disappeared for several hours. When she returned home, she barely spoke, just took a shower, and went straight to bed. One evening I invited her to join me. She hesitated. Only for a second. "It's a new class," she said quickly. "It's very intense. I don't think you'll like it." "Try it," I said with a smile. She laughed, but it sounded fake. "Maybe next time." There was no next time. The second call came. And then Michael. Sweet, innocent Michael, who knew nothing about lies, about betrayal. One night, when I was putting him to bed, he said something that made my stomach twist. "Mom was with Uncle Will today." I felt my whole body go cold. With Uncle Will? William, her co-worker. Someone she'd mentioned in passing before, never giving him much thought. Michael nodded. "He's funny." They laughed a lot. I forced a smile. "When did you see Uncle Will, buddy?" "At the park." I barely managed to keep my expression neutral. "Did your mom tell you that?" "No," Michael answered with a yawn. "I saw them myself." The third call. I kissed him on the forehead and walked out of his room, my hands shaking as I closed the door. My mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. Late nights. The gym. The secret. And now this. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid, jealous husband who jumped to conclusions. But Michael wouldn't lie. He didn't know how. That night, I hardly slept at all. I lay next to Susan, staring at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. My heart was pounding under my ribs. I was nauseous. I needed proof. Hard evidence. The next morning, I checked our joint bank account. 2 transactions stood out. One bill at a hotel bar in the city center. The second account at a restaurant we had never been to. She hadn't mentioned either of them. The fourth call. I never ran into her. Not yet. I needed to check one more thing. I took her gym bag from the closet and unzipped it. Inside, between her sportswear, was a wrapper from a rubber band. We hadn't used rubber bands in years. The last call. I closed the bag and put it back in the same place I found it. I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, my hands clenched into fists. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It wasn't uncertainty. She was cheating on me, and I was going to make her pay. Part 3. There was no denying it anymore. No second guessing. No excuses I could feed myself to keep from facing the truth. Susan was cheating on me, but I needed to see it. I needed the undeniable proof, something I could never unsee, something that would make it clear that there was no coming back from this. And I got it. That Friday, I told Susan I would be taking Michael to my parents' house for the weekend. She smiled, kissed me goodbye, and told me to have fun. I told her I would, but I never left. I parked my car a block away and took an Uber back home. I knew her routine by now. She had it down to a science. I slipped into the house through the back door, moving quietly, making sure not to make a sound. The house was dark, but I could hear movement upstairs. And then, laughter. A man's laughter. William. Rage burned through me like wildfire, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had come prepared. I pulled my phone from my pocket and turned on the camera. My hands were steady as I moved toward the staircase, creeping up one step at a time, my heart hammering in my chest. The hallway light was on. The bedroom door was slightly open, and inside, I saw everything. Susan, my wife, the woman I had built a life with, naked, tangled up in the sheets with him. On our bed, the bed we had bought together, the bed where our son had curled up between us on countless mornings, giggling as we tickled him awake. I hit record. The video captured it all. The way she moaned his name, the way she laughed, the way they kissed like they had done it 100 times before. There was no hesitation, no guilt, no second thoughts. Just pure, disgusting lust. And then, something made my blood turn to ice. Michael's voice. Mommy. My son. My 3-year-old son. His small, sleepy voice drifted from his room. He had woken up. My heart nearly exploded in my chest. I saw Susan freeze. William sat up, looking around like a deer caught in headlights. Susan scrambled off the bed, grabbing a robe, rushing toward the door. I stepped forward before she could reach it. The second she saw me, the color drained from her face. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. William swore under his breath, scrambling to cover himself, but I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at her. Keep going, I said, holding up my phone. Don't stop on my account. She stammered, shaking her head. I can explain. I laughed. Actually laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that barely covered the rage boiling inside me. Explain? No need. I got it all on video. She paled even more. Michael, I'll handle Michael, I said, my voice cold, controlled. You handle him. I shot a glare at William, who was now desperately pulling on his pants. Get out. He hesitated. Big mistake. I took a step closer, my fist clenched. I said get out. He grabbed his shoes and bolted. I heard the front door slam shut behind him. Susan stood there, shaking, clutching her robe, her eyes full of panic. I turned and walked away. Michael was standing in his doorway, rubbing his eyes. I scooped him up in my arms, pressing a kiss to his forehead. It's okay, buddy, I whispered. Go back to sleep. He nodded sleepily, resting his head against my shoulder. I carried him back to his bed, tucking him in gently. My heart ached as I looked at him, so small, so innocent, unaware of how his world was about to change. When I stepped back into the hallway, Susan was standing there, tears streaming down her face. I didn't want you to find out like this, she whispered. I stared at her. I had no words, no emotion left to give her. Just a cold, empty void where my love for her used to be. You didn't want me to find out at all, I corrected. You just wanted to keep fucking him behind my back. She flinched at my words. I made a mistake. No, I interrupted. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk from the store. This is a choice. Over and over again. Her lip trembled. I never wanted to hurt you. I scoffed. Yeah? Well, you did. Silence stretched between us. I let it. Let her sit in it. Let her feel the weight of what she had done. Finally, I took a slow breath and said the words I had been holding in for weeks. I'm filing for divorce. And I'm taking Michael. Her eyes widened. You can't. I cut her off. Watch me. And then, without another word, I walked past her, grabbed my keys, and left the house. I didn't look back. The alarms weren't just ringing anymore. They were deafening. Part 4. I walked out of that house with one goal in mind, obliteration. Susan had shattered my world, and I wasn't just going to leave quietly. No, I was going to take everything from her. Everything she held dear. Everything she thought she could keep while making a fool out of me. The first step was securing my son. I wasn't going to let him grow up under the same roof as a woman who could betray her family so easily. I had already been documenting everything, the late nights, the secrecy, the lies. Now, I had the crown jewel, video evidence of her infidelity in our home while our son was sleeping just down the hall. I spent the weekend gathering every financial document, every shared account statement, every message that could support my case. Susan was sloppy. She had used our joint account for hotel bars, fancy dinners, little expenses she thought I wouldn't notice. I noticed. Monday morning, I met with my lawyer. I want full custody, I told him. And I want the house. He nodded. With the evidence you have, that shouldn't be a problem. Judges don't look kindly on a parent bringing strangers into the home while a child is present. Good. We drafted the paperwork immediately. Divorce. Custody. Financial division. I wanted it all. Susan would be left with nothing but regret and whatever scraps I allowed her to keep. That same day, I started phase 2, destroying William. I had met his girlfriend, Rachel, once or twice at work functions. She was sweet, the kind of woman who deserved better than the man she thought she was building a future with. So I did what any good man would do. I made sure she knew exactly what kind of snake she was dating. I sent her the video. Less than an hour later, my phone rang. Hello? Rachel's voice was shaking. I don't know what to say. There's nothing to say, I replied. Just know that you deserve better. She let out a choked sob. Thank you for telling me. That was all I needed to hear. I knew Rachel wouldn't keep quiet. She would make sure William's life fell apart just as spectacularly as mine had. And I wasn't done. William and Susan worked together. Their company had a strict no fraternization policy. It was buried in the employee handbook, something no one paid attention to until it mattered. I emailed the HR department anonymously, attaching the video. By the end of the week, William had been fired. By the end of the month, his name was dragged through the mud at work, his reputation obliterated. No company in their industry would touch him. He was toxic now. Meanwhile, Susan was spiraling. When she was served the divorce papers, she called me over and over, leaving voicemails full of sobs, begging me to talk. I didn't. Then the custody battle began. She fought. She screamed. She tried to play the victim. But the court wasn't on her side. The video, the financial records, the testimony of my lawyer, everything painted a clear picture. She was reckless. She was unfit. And worst of all, she had been caught. The judge awarded me full custody. Susan lost the house. She lost her son. She lost everything. But I wasn't done yet. I made sure everyone knew. Our friends, our families. The people she had lied to, the ones who had told me I was crazy for suspecting something. I sent the proof directly to them. There was no escaping it. She became the woman who lost her family because she couldn't keep her legs closed. And as for William, Rachel threw him out. His career was in ruins. His name became synonymous with disgrace. He tried reaching out to me once to clear the air. I blocked his number. There was nothing left to say. Susan begged for another chance. Told me she had made a mistake. That she didn't want to lose her family. That she was sorry. Sorry wouldn't fix it. She made her bed. Now she had to lie in it. The destruction was complete. And I had one. Even after all of this, she tried to fight back. She tried to paint herself as the victim. I heard through mutual friends that she spun some ridiculous story about how she had been unhappy in our marriage, how I had emotionally neglected her. But the evidence was damning. No one bought her lies. Michael was safe with me, thriving in a stable home. The house that she once lived in, the one she tried to use as her playground for betrayal, was now solely mine. And her life? A wreckage she couldn't escape. She moved into a tiny apartment, scraping by, barely making ends meet. She wanted shared custody, wanted to take Michael on weekends. But the judge had seen what she was, an unfit mother who prioritized her own selfish desires over her child. Her visitation rights were limited, supervised. And William? The last I heard, he had left town, his career shattered, his name tainted. Rachel had exposed him for the fraud he was, and no woman in their circle wanted anything to do with him. He went from being the charming, confident executive to a nobody. Just another disgrace trying to outrun his past. The last time I saw Susan, she was sitting in her car outside my house, watching as I played with Michael in the yard. I saw the regret in her eyes, the misery, the loneliness she had brought upon herself. She had thought she could have everything, her affair, her family, her comfortable life. Instead, she had nothing. And I had everything. She destroyed our marriage. I destroyed her life. Part 5. It's over. I won. I wake up every morning now with peace. No more knots in my stomach, no more wondering where Susan is, no more questioning my own sanity. The air feels lighter, the silence in my home is comforting, not suffocating. My son is happy. He laughs, he plays, and he sleeps soundly at night, no longer in a house filled with lies and betrayal. Susan? She's exactly where she deserves to be. Broken. Alone. After losing custody, losing the house, and losing everything she took for granted, she tried to rebuild her life. But it turns out that once you show the world who you really are, they never forget. She had to move out of our old town, forced into some tiny, rundown apartment because she couldn't afford anything better. Her job, once her source of pride, became unbearable. People whispered. They knew. Her name was forever linked to scandal. Promotions stopped coming. The invitations to social events dried up. Nobody wants to be friends with the woman who lost everything because she couldn't keep her legs closed. She tried dating again. That was almost funny to watch from a distance. Men don't take her seriously anymore. They use her, discard her, leave her exactly the way she left me. She thought she could find another William, Another man stupid enough to risk everything for a cheap thrill. But men like that don't want a woman with baggage, a woman with a reputation, a woman who lost her own son because of her selfishness. She's aging, desperate, clinging to whatever scraps of attention she can get. It's pathetic. Michael barely acknowledges her anymore. She gets supervised visits twice a month. That's it. That's all the court allowed. And even then, he doesn't look forward to seeing her. She tries to force a smile, tries to pretend everything is normal, but Michael knows. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. He doesn't see her as mommy anymore. He sees her as a stranger who threw everything away. And William? He's done. Finished. Destroyed. His career? Over. Nobody in his industry will touch him. After Rachel exposed him, after his company kicked him to the curb, word spread. Nobody wants to hire a man who got fired for screwing a married coworker in her own home while her child was sleeping in the next room. He bounced from one dead-end job to another, each one lower than the last. The man who once strutted around in expensive suits, who thought he was untouchable, now struggles to pay rent. Rachel didn't just leave him. She ruined him. She took half his savings in their split, exposed him to everyone they knew, and made sure his name was synonymous with disgrace. Every woman he tries to date hears the stories. Every employer Googles his name. He tried leaving the state, thinking he could start over somewhere else. It didn't work. The internet never forgets. The last I heard, he was drinking too much, burning through whatever money he had left, trying to cling to some semblance of his old life. But that life is gone. He's nothing now. I should feel anger. I should feel bitterness. But I don't. I feel satisfaction. Justice. I built my life back up from the ashes Susan left behind. I focused on Michael, on making our home a place filled with love and stability. I worked hard, got a promotion, and made sure my son never felt the absence of his mother. Not once. Because she was never really a mother, was she? A mother doesn't betray her child's family. A mother doesn't destroy her home for selfish, fleeting pleasure. The funny thing? Susan still tries. Every few months, she'll send a pathetic text, begging to talk, to fix things. She says she's changed, that she's sorry. She asks if we can work together for Michael's sake. I don't answer. There's nothing left to say. Her life is a ruin of her own making. She wakes up every day knowing she lost everything. She sees the consequences of her actions every single moment. She sees me thriving, happy, raising our son in the home she was kicked out of. She sees William as a broken, unemployed loser, a reminder of the choice that ruined her life. I have everything. They have nothing. And I wouldn't change a damn thing. The end.